Hi, everybody. This webinar is hosted by the Oregon Farmers Markets Association, or OFMA, OFMA. OFMA supports farmers markets with training, networking, advocacy, funding, and promotion. We run workshops and peer learning circles every month. And there are lots of opportunities through OFMA to connect and find support from the statewide farmers market community. You can check out our event schedule online and see what's coming next, and we hope you'll register and join us again. And we also have recordings of all our past workshops in our YouTube library. We'll put a few links in the chat if you want to check those out. Happy to see this crowd gathering here. We've already started with introductions. Thank you for popping in the chat and saying hello. My name's Amanda Cross. I'm with OFMA and here hosting this Zoom room today. Also here from OFMA is Kendra Graves, who you'll be talking with via the chat window. We want to welcome the cameras can be on or off, whatever feels good to help you attend and participate. And please do participate. Our goal today is to introduce a spreadsheet tool for tracking data, and we want to make sure you can jump right into using it. So as we go along, please raise a hand or use the chat to ask questions. Plus, we'll have time at the end for more Q&A. Don't forget, give your questions, but also be mindful to give space. If you're participating by talking, make sure to give time to others to respond back to those questions that you're asking, and also for others to ask their own questions. We've got about an hour and a half together today. We'll be doing some introduction about how this data dashboard developed, and then we'll get into a demo session on how to use it. Our speakers today include Orion Lorenz from Lane County Farmers Market. They'll be talking about how their market collects and uses data. But first, I want to bring in Denise Chin and Noah Enlow from EcoTrust Measurement and Evaluation Team. They worked with OFMA to develop the data dashboard that we're unveiling for you all today. So welcome, Noah and Denise. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Amanda. And yeah, welcome everybody. Welcome to this presentation. We will do introductions to ourselves in just a second. I want to show you the agenda for our presentation. We'll meet the team, Noah and I, and we'll talk a little bit about our backgrounds. We will share a little bit about the OFMA cohort-based program that Amanda will talk more about. And then I'll share about feedback that we heard from market managers when we did a listening session with this cohort, specific to data, using data, the data tool that they were given to use and how it worked for them and what didn't work for them. At the same time, right after that, we will hear from Orion, who'll give us their perspective of how it worked or didn't work for them. And then we'll go into the meat of it, which is sharing the DIY tool with you all. And then we'll also have Q&A during that time and after that time. So that's the agenda for our time today. The team, I'm Denise Chin. I'm the Measurement and Evaluation Manager at EcoTrust. I've been at EcoTrust since 2019. My work, I can broadly categorize into two categories, which is to support understanding EcoTrust's organizational impact. We do quite a few different things that are very broad and diverse. We have a forestry team working on indigenous agroforestry. We have a food and farms and food equity team. We also have a team that's working on coastal communities in Alaska. So these are very broad aspects of work that my team is working on understanding our large impact organizationally. That's one. Another function of my job specifically is to support these teams individually in their various evaluation needs, and that's the broad spectrum ranging from evaluation design, tool design for data collection, so that's surveys or that's any sort of listening session, and then doing the analysis and reporting. And we do that utilizing our equitable evaluation toolkit. So we use an equity lens in all of the work that we do. I am going to pass the mic to Noah to share a little bit more about himself.
Thanks, Denise. Hi, everybody. My name's Noah, and hello. I'm EcoTrust's Director of 3E Research and Evaluation. I've been at EcoTrust for about 13 years, doing all manner of data analysis, economic analysis, and grant and program evaluation. So yeah, I worked with Denise, and I head up our measurement and evaluation team. We worked together with our VPs of community resource mobilization and our VP of social enterprise and community capital to build an equitable evaluation toolkit that Denise was just talking about. And I'm really excited about I've been really excited about working with Amanda and working with you all on this project because I really like um, solving data problems and using tools to make people's lives easier and make it easier for people to understand their impacts and what their work is producing. So I'm excited to give you an introduction to the tool after Denise and I believe Orion give some more information and storytelling around the cohort and all the work that you all have done with Amanda over the last couple of years. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Noah. That said, I'm going to call upon Amanda to share about the OFMA cohort program for those who don't know about it.
Sure, yeah. There we go. Yep. So yeah, about 5 years ago, OFMA had an opportunity that changed a bit about how we think about farmers market data. Thanks to a farmers market promotion program grant, OFMA was able to work with 9 Oregon farmers markets to help them with collecting sales data from their vendors and customer data around crowd counts. We chose these 9 markets very deliberately. They represented an incredible range of Oregon's farmers markets. Some were large, some were small, some operate year-round, others were seasonal. They're spread across the state from Baker City to Portland. And for 3 seasons, these markets made up OFMA's research cohort, and they were committed to collecting sales data from every single vendor for every market day, plus crowd counts at least once per month. Let's see. So we learned how powerful data can be for markets in making smart decisions about their operations, and also what OFMA could do when we combine markets information and gain perspective that no single market can tell on its own. So yeah, we can show our collective impact, whether that's to funders, agencies, or potential new shoppers who want to know what farmers markets really offer their communities. And we can provide industry benchmarks back to markets, things like average vendor sales, how many people visit markets each week, and things like typical vendor fees and budgets and pay scales so that you know how your market compares to others. During that 3 years, we discovered what it takes to collect good data, what challenges markets face, and how crucial it is to have good tools for analysis. So we're excited to share the dashboard that we developed to make data collection and analysis much easier for your market. And and Denise was going to share some more about some of what we learned from the work event.
So I'm going to share a little bit of feedback that we heard from market managers. So EcoTrust was brought on as consultants, and one of the things that we did was conduct listening sessions with the market managers. We asked them questions on a variety of things, including data, how they collected data, the data tool that they were given, and how that worked or didn't work for them. So we did 2 sessions. With market managers, we were able to get 11 participants, and we were able to have all markets represented, so 9 markets represented. We categorized their responses by 3 different large themes. So positive, we had folks give appreciation for the thoroughness of the tool, usability, and the ability to make comparisons of sales trends, traffic, vendor attendance, and performance. Some managers said that using this tool helped them with decision making, strategizing future sales plans, and then doing cross comparisons across markets. The cohort was able to talk to each other to share some ways that worked for them and what didn't work for them when it came to data collection. Some challenges that they mentioned was having to hound vendors to get that data, especially for those who have a large market. They mentioned that data input could be tedious. Data accuracy was a concern because of how tedious things could be. Some vendors noted that some managers noted that data anonymity was a concern, especially with some vendors. And then some also noted that they had difficulty with customer counts at the beginning of the month. And lastly, market managers noted that they would have liked deeper dives on data with the larger cohort. They would have liked more consistent communication between vendors and managers for data sharing and management, and also more communication materials for sharing data with vendors. And so we try to address some of that as much as we could with this tool that we'll share with you. So you'll see some visualizations that are automated based on the data that you put. And Noah will share that in a moment. And I'm going to share with you some quotes as well that came up from our listening sessions. The only barrier was having to hound vendors who forgot to submit data, especially with a large market, though it was worth it to get a complete data set. So maybe that helps you think about how it would work for your market, how it would work for your vendors in thinking of data collection. Another quote is that it was worth the effort to collect, though they don't have enough staff to collect crowd count accurately. Yes, who's counting matters. Another thing to think about, but your market is how you would do a crowd count if you're not doing one already. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Amanda to introduce Orion.
Yeah, so the Lane County Farmers Market was one of the markets in the research cohort, and Orion is a staff person who managed collecting sales from vendors and getting a bunch of all those crowd counts. So Orion, please share with us about your work and the challenges you experienced and what made getting the data worth it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Amanda. Hi, everyone. I am Orion. I'm the market manager, one of the market managers at the Lane County Farmers Market. For some context about our market, we have up to about 120 vendors on a Saturday, and our markets are on Saturdays and Tuesdays. Saturdays are basically year-round. We run mid-January through mid-December, and then Tuesdays are May through October. Just to give you a little bit of context about what I'm going to be talking about. So to me, sales reporting matters. Sales reporting and data collection matters for a market because it's part of our job to know how our vendors are doing, and generally checking in with each one of them, yes, but also to know bigger picture, like, is our market growing? Are we shrinking? Are we, staying roughly the same? It also very much helps to be able to see if certain types of vendors are doing well or not doing well, because that's an indicator for like product saturation, which is helpful for some markets to note. It also helps us to spot trends that can be used to inform future marketing and also procedural changes that we might want to be making. So the way that we collected data, we'd had multiple different sources of doing this because we're a big market and not everyone is going to want to do the same thing, especially if they are a vendor that maybe isn't great with technology or like doesn't use technology. So one of the methods, we had printed out QR codes that we attached to the token bags that we gave each vendor for their market tokens. So it's just right there and super easy for them. We also sent the link to do the actual sales reporting with our weekly map email that vendors get. For vendors that didn't want to do anything involving technology, we gave them paper sheets on request to submit sales data with. So really doing everything that we could to make sure that vendors were submitting sales data. And we did this for every Saturday market during the time that we were doing this for the cohort, but since then we have started to also collect Tuesday market sales data because we think it's valuable to know how each of our vendors are doing at different markets. And as far as the results go, most of our vendors really appreciated the fact that we were taking the steps to collect this data. And we got pretty positive feedback on like the confidentiality part of it and the ease of having multiple different ways to submit sales data. And a lot of people gave me personally feedback on how helpful it feels to have concrete numbers to show how our market is doing. It's also the only real way for us to know like the real actual data for sales. Like, of course, we see what we're reimbursing vendors for, but that is not counting cash or credit. So yeah, just general feedback from our vendors. In terms of staffing requirements, this whole project really only took me. I was able to add it to my other weekly duties, and I would just take one day and plug in all of the sales data from the different sources of it. And that was pretty much the most like tedious, time-consuming thing, aside from having to nudge vendors to actually submit that data, which can be tough for a larger market like us. So how we're using this data now, we include in our annual report now a much more accurate number of our total gross sales for the year for all of our vendors, for all of our markets. And as of last year, this was the first year that we were able to give, a super accurate number. Also internally on our committees and also among staff, we have been using this data to kind of inform change or propose changes for coming years. Mainly in the way of like product saturation, like I was talking about earlier, or vendor type saturation. We have also used this to update our data for our sponsorship tiers. I know some markets offer different sponsorship tiers, for people to sponsor the market with. And this has helped us to give, more accurate data for potential sponsors. Some real life examples of how it helped. We were able to allocate more resources to promoting our Tuesday market after looking at the sales data for Tuesday markets versus Saturday markets. So that was a really good signal to notify us like where we should be directing more of our time and energy. And also to inform our weather policy, because as we're collecting this data, we're also taking note of things like, oh, this day was really hot, this day was really cold, it was really rainy, or there was some big event in town. And that really helped us to understand how people respond to the different extreme weather conditions, and helped us kind of consider, oh, should we make a change to our weather policy if people are not going to be showing up during these crazy bouts of weather. So yeah, those were just some examples of how that data collection helped us to shape our market into something a little bit different. That's everything I've got, Amanda, so I will pass it back to you. Oh, I do see there's a couple of questions in the chat. Should I answer those now?
Yes, I think those that one that just came in is probably for you. Yeah.
Great. About how many vendors did you have to nudge weekly? The way that I did it, I would not nudge vendors every single week, because after a point they kind of get, bogged down with emails oftentimes, or, stop opening the emails. So I would wait a couple of months and then I would just email everyone that I had not seen data come in from for a couple of months or a couple of weeks rather. And then when it got toward the end of the year, when we were supposed to be like wrapping up the last of the data, I would call them and really, really bug them for a couple of weeks until everything was submitted. I did not personally text vendors. I found calling to be the most effective method for us. Yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Any more questions for Orion?
And we'll share that annual report from Lane County with our follow-up email with the recording, so you can check out how it looks when they put their data in a visual way for their community to see.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Orion. That was really great. Really insightful sharing. We're going to move along to the part of the presentation where you'll get to see the tool. And this is a new and improved tool, different from the one that the cohort used. And we have Noah to thank for creating this tool and reiterating this tool. And I wanted to mention a few ways you can engage during this time. So Noah's going to share his screen and you can follow along that way as he moves us along each worksheet of how you will put data in and what you'll see from adding that data. Or we'll share a link to the tool right now and you can move around at your own pace. What it is right now is you are a viewer for this tool, which means you're not allowed to edit it. If you wanted to, you would have to make a duplicate and then put in the data, your own data, to see how it works. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? And if anybody needs help or support with duplicating or any of that, we're here. You can ask us. And yeah, I'm going to pass the floor to Noah. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Noah can share his screen.
Great. Thank you, Denise.
Yeah.
So one quick update. I have actually expanded your permissions. You're still not editors, but you are now allowed to comment on the tool. So in order to do that, you would right click and then leave a comment. So this will allow you to have a little more participation. So I can receive comments that way, as well as in the chat during this session. If you want to make a copy, just go to File, Make a Copy, and then you can copy it over to your own drive, rename it whatever you want, and play with it. And that's what I recommend in terms of getting to know this tool and how it works, getting a feel for it. So without further ado, I'll just dive in and explain it, and then we can do some Q&A. I'm starting in the middle of the spreadsheet in one of the middle tabs, so you can see what the outputs of the tool are. You can see what it's going to do for you. And then before I step back and then explain, what each sheet means and how to enter it, where to enter data, where not to enter data, because that's important. So this tool will give you profiles of your market for a given year. I have a very small amount of dummy data in here. This data is fake, completely made up. There's no reality to it. So it's just example data. You can erase it. You should erase it if you're going to start working with this. But this is a dashboard, and you get one of these for each year of your market. This is an example from 2025. This dashboard gives you a head count of the number of vendors, which of those were new and beginning vendors, meaning 4 years or less in operation, which were farms, food vendors, crafts and art vendors, and service providers, and then the sales amount associated with each. It'll also give you maximum and minimum market day sales per vendor across the whole season. for new and beginning vendors and for all vendors. And then it'll give you averages, market day sales per vendor. You can also visualize this, for example, sales amount by vendor type. This is a pie chart which gives you the total sum of all sales by vendor type: farm, food, crafts, and art and service. Those are the four types of vendors that those are your four options. A vendor has to be one of those four types. And then the percentages underneath that, each label there. It'll also visualize maximum market day sales by new and beginning vendors versus all vendors. Again, don't pay attention to the actual data points. When you enter real data, it'll give you a real result. You will get vendor attendance data, the maximum number of vendors at a given market, or on a given day across all the days of your market season. The minimum number of vendors, so what's the fewest that showed up on a given day across all the days, and then the average number of vendors. Averaging across all days, what's the average? We can also get vendor specific data. So in this case, you get highest sales by vendor type. So here you have your four types: farm, food, crafts and art and service, and it'll give you the highest sale amount for any vendor in that type and the date on which it occurred. It'll also give you the vendor ID number, which I'll explain really shortly. Like that's the number that's associated with each vendor. Each vendor is given a unique ID. Okay. And I'll explain that more later. The next sheet you'll want to look at is your weekly analysis, and it will give you a lot of data, including the crowd count on each day. Along the top row 5 here, are all of the market days in a given season. And this also is dummy. This is a dummy calendar. Okay, this is a calendar that an example that I have a sheet where you can enter all the days when your market's going to be open, and it'll provide you with that whole list across row 5 there. And then that list will also conform to your data entry sheet. They'll all be the same dates. You just enter the dates once, and then it populates to all the sheets where the dates are included. And so then this weekly analysis will give you these results across all the dates of your market season. So those results include the crowd count, so the estimated number of people, customers that showed up, the number of vendors that were present, the number of farm vendors that were present, the number of new and beginning vendors were present, the number of vendors that reported data. Not everybody who shows up reports data, as we know. So that'll give you a sense of, are there folks, are you getting shortfalls in reporting data or not? Percentage of vendors reporting data. Again, this 100% is entirely artificial. Total market day sales across all vendors. Total market day sales for farms and new and beginning vendors, and then some averages. Average per vendor, average sales per customer, gives you a sense of how much each person is spending on average. Average sales for new and beginning vendors, is it below or above all vendors? And average for farms. And then we've got some visualizations that you can that can be informative here. The crowd count by week, you can see how it fluctuates. As Orion was saying, you can link, if you know that a particular date, was very hot or rainy, you can link fluctuations in data to weather conditions and other conditions that affect markets. And then market day total sales per week. The sales may fluctuate week to week based on the number of people who attended the market. And so you can track that here. And again, you get one of these weekly analysis tabs per year. This is the one for 2026. Again, entirely fake data. Yeah, so these are some of the results that you can get from this dashboard. You've also got a vendor analysis, which will give you a summary of each vendor. If you want to get down to the level of each individual vendor and how well they did in a given year, you can do that based on their unique ID. which I'll show you shortly. You'll get their type. You'll get their sale, total sales, average sale, number of sales days, their absentee rate, which you may be interested in. If some vendors are persistently absent, you may want to, talk with them, figure out why. Whether they're a new and beginning vendor, and then their highest sale day, highest sale, lowest sale day, and lowest or low for that day. So that's your vendor analysis. Again, you get one of these per year, which gives you all the vendors, and I have room for 200 vendors. Okay. I can expand that if someone needs me to do that. I believe 200 should be sufficient for most markets. You also get one of those for 2026 with the same vendor IDs that link to the same vendors. So if you have a lot of turnover, you might actually run out of vendor IDs at some point. You might have to add more, and then you might have to you'll have to update this list here. This is just going in order, but you can add. In fact, I should color code this blue to indicate that you can plug in the numbers of the vendors that that attended your market in the year in question, in this case 2026, in this case 2025. It's really important, that you have a clear tracking of vendors, and that that you're tracking each vendor independently and only once. Sometimes if different people are entering vendor data, they'll enter, slight different spelling, or and versus ampersand, or a space at the end, or, there are all these different ways in which you can end up tracking the same vendor more than once, and then you're not going to get a complete picture of that vendor. And again, more on that very shortly. I'll show you the final analysis tab, which is the annual analysis. Here you can compare across years. These results along the left-hand side, the number of sales days, the total number of separate customers that arrived at the market, including duplicate or repeat customers. It's not counting unique people, it's counting attendance across the whole year. The number of vendors, and that will be a unique number. Number of farm vendors, number of new and beginning vendors, then some information about vendors reporting, and then information about sales, vendors, farms, new and beginning vendors, and averages, including average sale per customer. So you get a pretty good profile of like what went on in your market on that year, and here you can compare across the years. So that's what you get. Okay, I've started with a punchline, so now we're going to get into what you have to do in order to get it. It's a little bit of work that you have to do, and so I suggest that you have a point person whose job it is to be the keeper of this data set, because it's really important that this be well curated to make sure that you have good data. Make sure that your vendor list is clean and that it's up to date. Make sure that you're getting, good uniform sales data and crowd count data entered for each day that you have a market. And making sure that your calendar is accurate as well. Those are important things to keep in mind. So there's an instructions tab here that gives you it's just written instructions for each tab in the spreadsheet. I would say like the one thing just to keep in mind always is only enter data in cells that are color-coded blue. It's really important so that you don't overwrite any formulas, because the formulas are really intricate and they're interrelated. So the formulas are like definitely, please do not touch. And the cells entered that are color-coded blue are where you're really meant to enter the data. And if you make a mistake or have a flailing fingers problem, as I do often, and you accidentally overwrite a formula, Control Z is your friend. You can undo that. And if it gets beyond where Control Z will fix it, you can always go back to the template that I've linked you to, and you can make another copy and start over. Or if you just have unretrievable errors on one sheet, you can copy that sheet over. and then start over with a fresh sheet. You don't need to always start over with a fresh workbook. So there are different things you can do if errors happen, because they do. Okay, so I'm not going to read out this whole instruction sheet. I'm just going to alert you to it, and then I'm going to walk you through each tab so that and just give you the instructions verbally, and then you can use this instructions sheet as a reference. So beginning, very important, is your vendor roster. Okay, these white cells are numbers that are just in order. They go up to 200. Don't touch them. Instead, just worry about the cells in blue. For each vendor, you want to enter their name, what type of food, or sorry, what type of vendor they are, food, crafts, farm, or service. What type of product? This is not comprehensive. For example, there is not a typology for crafts and art. Like if somebody sells, paintings versus, coffee mugs versus photographs, that's not included here. If that matters, we can expand the menu to include things like that. But right now we just have a selection of the types of products that are have been most of interest for the data cohort, which might change. So definitely let us know about that. And then the year initiated. And so this year each year data sheet will refer back to this year initiated to determine whether or not the vendor was an NBV, a new or beginning vendor in that year, right? Vendors are NBVs if they've been on operation for 4 years or less. They're not NBVs forever. In 2025, somebody might be an NBV and not in 2026. So we do that calculation for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So this is a roster that you want to keep up to date. Don't ever erase vendors. Just keep adding them to the bottom. Each vendor gets one ID only. If you're not sure whether a vendor is captured on this list, inspect the list. You can also do a find. Don't do the replace, just do a find, right? If I'm, let's say there are, 150 vendors and I don't know if Billy's Crafts exist. Can I find it? Yeah, there it is. I can see that Billy's vendors exist, or Billy's Crafts exist as a vendor. So this is your vendor roster. Yeah, it keeps the names consistent. I will move on and I'll take questions at the end. So if you have any questions, please save them. I do want to hear them. The next step is really critical. This is your calendar for a given year. Okay. You want to enter the year in cell C2 here in this blue coded sheet, coded cell. You then have a chart of market days for that given year. Mark an X for each day on which you have a market. In this case, the examples are Wednesday and Saturday. Then mark which month that market day starts. You may have different market days that start on different months. It may be the same month. It may not. This allows you to have market days starting in different months. So in this example, the Wednesday market starts on May and the Saturday market starts in April. And then mark the week of that month when the market starts. It may be the first week of that month, or it may not. This gives you flexibility. You get 1 through 5, and then it will calculate what the date is associated with this combination of days. The second Wednesday in May for 2025 is May 14th. So that's the pattern of data entry there. And so it'll give you also do it for the end month and end week. And so it'll give you a start day and an end day for each of the market days that you're hosting the market. And this way, what this will do is then generate a list of days that is then going to show up on the next data entry sheet, which I'm going to show you, which is the calendar sales data. Okay. So this pattern of days translates into this horizontal list in row 6. Okay. Here's May 14th. Here's when the Wednesday starts. Everything up till then is a Saturday market. Then the Wednesday starts. So this is the core data entry sheet for sales data for the season. Sales by vendor. Your vendors will go down the left-hand side. You will use the numbers. Do not enter the names. The names will be pulled from the roster from the numbers. So you might want to actually make a separate copy of the roster and look at it alongside the calendar sales data sheet. Again, this is just to make sure that, Jane's food, someone doesn't accidentally misspell Jane's food, Jan's food, or Jane's food with 2 spaces, right? Because then that she would show up as a separate vendor from Jane's food, and that would make it impossible to analyze like what is going on with Jane's food. So if you know that vendor number 1001 is Jane's food, just enter 1001 and you're going to get Jane's food and you're going to get all of her details here. And here in the blue cells, you get to enter all of the market data. One other important thing, make sure that the year is correct. The year given in cell C2 up at the top. So here's where you enter your data, and we have, I think 200 rows or so. Yeah, 200 rows that in which you can enter data, where you could have up to 200 vendors. In terms of the number of columns, I have given you about let's see, 80 columns shown, and then there are another 120 columns to the right. So you can have a pretty extensive market if you want to, or if that's what your market is doing, if that's the trend. You can add columns, unhide these columns using this arrow here, and show it'll show all the dates that are shown on the calendar. Okay, I'm seeing some questions beginning to roll in. I've got one more sheet to show you. Okay, and then I'll start answering questions. That sheet is the crowd count sheet. Okay, this crowd count sheet is based on market hours and market entrances at which you count. Okay, and the length of your counting period. So again, you want here in cell B2, you got to make sure the year.
Should I go over how crowd counts happen first?
Oh yeah, sure. Oh, if not everybody knows how crowd counts happen, then I think this is Amanda's turn to explain. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so so the cohort used a process that was developed by Oregon State University, and we've actually just put a link in the chat to it, so you can go read that later and have all the notes from on exactly how to do it. But basically, the way it works is that every hour that your market is open, you'll station volunteers or maybe yourself at entrances to your market with a clicker, and for a set amount of time. Some markets do 10 minutes, some markets do 15, some markets do 20 minutes. You count everybody who comes into the market. Some markets only count adults, some markets include kids. It's up to you. So during that time, say that 10 minutes, you get 20 people, you mark that down for that hour, then each hour you do that again, you do your 10-minute count, you times it by, so if you're doing a 10-minute count, you times it by 6, and then that's your estimate for the hour. And then for the whole day, you add those all together, and that's your estimate of how many people came to the market. And then this sheet that Noah is going to show you is where you record all of that information and have it collected for you for the year. So you're good to go, Noah, I think.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, very, very important. So I'm just taking this methodology and translating it into a data tool here. And so that you want to start out by entering some parameters of how long a day is your market day. In this case, I have a start time 8 a.m., end time 1 p.m., and then it's calculated that's 5 hours, right? This sheet gives you space for up to 12 market day hours. I don't expect that you'll have that necessarily, but it just gives you the flexibility to have that. So then the next thing you want to enter is the number of market entrances. So how many entrances do you have at which you station counters? And we're going to use that as a basis for estimation. We're just going to assume that you're going to put the either counters at every entrance or counters at the main entrances. There may be some people trickling in from the sides or smaller entrances, but we're not going to worry about that. It's an estimate. It doesn't have to be exact. And then you're going to enter, here in L6, how many minutes after the hour do you count the crowds? That's just so it gives you an accurate time window in the spaces below. And then, very importantly, how many minutes per hour do you count the crowds? Because the numbers that you're going to get from a 60-minute count are going to be different than the numbers that you're going to get from a 10-minute count. And we adjust for them in the crowd count estimate. We multiply it by the kind of the inverse, like the shorter the period that you count, we multiply that to estimate what it would be over the course of a whole hour. So if you only count for 15 minutes, then we're going to multiply that by 4 to get the estimate for the whole hour, if that makes sense. So here, based on what you enter here, these formulas down below are going to change. So let's say I had a market that started at 6 a.m. I would never do that because I'm not a morning person, but let's just say we did. And then it ended at 3 p.m. So now you see that this is now a 9-hour market. And let's say I had 4 market entrances, right? So now it's going to give you 4 spaces down here, and it's going to give you hours numbered from 1 to 9, and then when you get past that, it's just going to tell you end of day, so don't enter any information there. And then the info from your counters goes into these spaces here. Make sure that each row from a counter goes into a space marked by an entrance in column C. And so here in these blue cells that correspond to the entrances is where you enter your data. And then the calculation happens in row 13 here. Okay, and that's your crowd count. And all that information together is what's going to give you all those cool results that are given in these sheets, and that are going to give you a much clearer picture of what's going on in your market, what's going on with your vendors, what's going on with your crowds. And then, as Orion said, you can trace that to weather conditions. You can trace it to vendor types. You can trace it to new and beginning vendors if you want. You can look at customer sales averages, and you can also look at absentee issues and reporting issues, and then address those issues as they come up. So yeah, my hope is that this will make the process of collecting and analyzing data relatively easy for you, and maybe even fun. All right.
Thanks, Noah. Looks like we have some questions that already got started in the chat. I can start with the first one from Linnea, who asks, is it calculating new and beginning vendors based on the year initiated? The farm might be 20 years old, but only been at our market for 2 years. Seems like that would make it show as new beginning, which would be incorrect. So the way the cohort did it is what we wanted to know was truly new vendors. So like people who were just starting out their farmers market career. So if a vendor had been selling at farmers markets for 10 years already, but was at your market it was their first year at your market, they would not be a new and beginning vendor because they'd already had 10 years of experience selling in farmers markets. So that year you want to put there is when did they start selling at farmers markets, even if it's not your market. That's just the way the cohort did it, though. That was the type of new and beginning vendor that we were interested in. I suppose if your own market is wanting to know how new vendors to your market specifically are doing, I think that year initiated could be year initiated at your market and still work. You just need to know how you're defining it. And then Lacey asks about the market calendar. Is there a provision for markets whose schedules changes over the year? Our market is mainly in the main season and bi-weekly in the winter, with sometimes slightly longer breaks over the holidays. Noah, do you want to talk about how you
Yes.
thought people might be able to handle those situations?
Yes. So you would, okay, so I'm assuming that the biweekly market contains one of the days that is the same as the weekly market in the main season. Is that correct? Because if that's true, then you would just let's say that there's one day that is consistent across both the main season and the winter. You would just enter the longer season. Let's say it's Saturday, so you would just enter the whole longer season that one day's market is open, and then the bi-weekly. Oh, I see. Every other week in the winter, not twice a week. That is something I don't have a calculation for right now. That's good to know that is something you would make use of. I think at this point, what I would do is just don't use every date in the calendar. So just skip dates and create a convention. I would suggest like an N or something for dates on which there is no market that are within this calendar. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, markets in the cohort just skipped the week that populated then.
That makes sense. Yeah. So in that case, I suggest you do that because I think we want to keep this consistent with the cohort.
And Adam, I see your hand is raised. I'm just going to get through these chat questions that came in first, and then we'll get to you. Linnea asked about, we have volunteers who count during the entire market opening hour. Would that be a problem for this tool? And then Linnea follows up and says, oh, okay, so we can just put in 60 minutes and then it would do no multiplication. Linnea, I'm just a little confused because you're saying like during that open hour, you count for the entire 60 minutes. And then what do you do? Do you do something different?
No,
come on a little explain.
So I was just confused because we don't use that method that you were mentioning from OSU. We just simply have a volunteer stationed. They start 15 minutes before the market begins and they count like the entire time until the market ends. So we just wouldn't have to do multiplication, but the way that I understood it, we could just put length of counting period in minutes. We could just put 60 and then it would simply give us one line for each hour. Is that right?
I guess so, but what you're saying is your volunteer counts everybody who comes into the market, and so you get a count.
Yeah, we're not doing
you
like
may not need this seat then. You could just keep your total.
Yeah, we do break it down by hour. So every hour the volunteer makes a note that between this hour, just because we want to see the trend in hours, but we don't do the estimation based on like, oh, based on 10 minutes in this time period, this is what we think. We actually count between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. It was this many people.
Okay.
Great. Here's what I would do is just put one entrance because it sounds like you have one volunteer station, and then make the length of the counting period 60 minutes. And then you're going to have one row per hour, and that row is going to be the count. And then this total in row 13 is just going to add those together with no multiplication. And that's all you need to do.
That's what I think.
Yours is the simplest possible case, which is great.
Yeah, thank you.
Linnea, maybe if we have time later in this session, we can talk about where you are finding these volunteers that can spend 4 hours at the market counting. I love that. That's wonderful.
That's my only stable volunteer team. I have 2 people. They take half each, and yeah, it's wonderful.
Hey, Adam, what is your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. I just wanted to say first, Noah, this is a really awesome spreadsheet and excited to play around with it. I had a question about the vendor roster. I imagine the type of vendor, those categories were determined by the cohort. Is there an opportunity once individual markets are working on this that we can edit those vendor types? And then the type of product, is it possible to add, or would you advise for or against having multiple product types for single vendors? Because we do have vendors who, based on the season or just throughout the year, they offer different product types. Or does that just complicate things because then you're having to understand, okay, what percentage of their sales are going to different product types, and it just kind of busy things. So just use kind of what they're predominantly selling.
Yeah, I think I can answer your first question. I think the second question might be worth discussing with Amanda. But to answer your first question, you can edit this list. And you can edit the list. Yeah, you can just add more items here. So what you would do there is click on the menu, and then there's a little edit button at the bottom right-hand side of the menu. And then you just click on that button, and then you get to the list of vendor types. You can add, you could remove if you want to, and you can do the same for type of product. Here's your list. You can also allow here this list does allow multiple selections. Even though it doesn't look like it, even though it doesn't look like a multi-select, it is one. So here, this person now offers produce and processed food. You can't see it, but I think to be able to see it, you would, yeah, there, wrap the text and expand the cell. And expanding the cells does no harm to any of the formulas. So you can just do that. You can, let's say this person offers produce and meat and seafood. So you can do any of this here. You certainly can't do more than one type of vendor. But that's the current default setting. Amanda, anything to discuss around anything that Adam needs to know about, like multiple types of products or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So part of how these types of vendors and types of product developed over the course of the research cohort was that we were comparing first 5 markets and then 9 markets against each other. And we really, especially on type of vendor, we really needed to get it down to like 4 things to compare. We were just comparing so many vendors. So your market could, if it's helpful to you to have some more differentiation, you can add those other ones. These were the 4 that the cohort did, and just help cut down on the analysis time. Type of product, again, there, while they could pick multiple, because lots of vendors sell multiple different things, but we couldn't go to that level of granular detail for so many vendors and so many multiple of markets, but we needed to let the person who was analyzing this data know, like, what is the main, if we really want to compare, like, how are produce vendors doing or how are meat and seafood vendors doing, we needed to know that that was like their main thing and they should be included in that count. But if your market can get down into more of those details, yeah, go for it.
Got it. Makes sense. Thanks.
Other questions, and like how to navigate this, and like, don't be afraid if you're like, I never use Google Sheets, I need a few more details on like how I even move around in here.
Just from the chat, there was a question about whether or not the list offered in column D depends on the type of vendor chosen in column C, and the answer is no, and that sounds appropriate because when you may have multiple types of products being sold that don't map neatly to the vendor type, so you may want the whole list.
Linnea, what's your question?
this is just because you said we could open for more granular questions. I am just wondering if it sounded like we would want to have only, like, if I have a vendor who's there in 2026 and in 2027, I would only want to have them once on my roster list. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, very
was-
important.
Okay. The only reason why I'm asking is because I was wondering, I have like master vendor lists in other Google Sheets, and it would be really neat that I could just import them. But I have I have a master vendor list for 2025 and one for 2026, so I wouldn't be able to import both of those. But I guess I will have to do some magic halfway import where I remove duplicates or something like that. But yeah, just trying to think about ways to not have to type in data too many times is something I'm trying to do.
Lacey's question is about upkeep. Oh wait, sorry. Was there anything more that we needed to say to Linnea?
No, I think you're thinking about it in the right way.
I think I answered my own question. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Lacey's question is about upkeep. Some markets will fill up 200 vendors really fast. What's the reasoning behind limiting it, assuming formulas? Is expansion going to be permanently dependent on NOAA to keep maintaining it for us? So I think we might need to explain a little bit more about that, because we definitely had some very big markets, including the Umpqua Valley Farmers Market, Lane County Farmers Market, and 200 work, because in your vendor roster, your vendors that keep coming every year only get listed once. And then that gets, I don't know, maybe Noah's better to explain this.
I would just say, like, there's no reason for 200. How many do you want? Do you want 500? 1,000? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, just tell me, like, what's the maximum number that you think that, and we're talking unique vendors, right? Not counting vendors separately per year, like one vendor across all the years. I mean, it doesn't have to be the biggest market in the world, but if the turnover rate is great enough, you'll get to 200 vendors, quicker than, maybe I would think. So, I'd be happy to add, 200 more vendors if that would be helpful. It doesn't add, it's just a slightly larger file size, but it doesn't really cost me anything. I have to update some of the formulas in terms of their endpoint, like the last row in the formula, but that's not a huge effort. So, yeah, turnover special event vendors. Okay, I see. That's a question. I don't know. Do we want this to include special event vendors? Does that matter? Is that because if those were not included, then it might make 200 a little bit more manageable.
I think it would depend for the different markets. I mean, part of this is based on, like, when OFMA has done our census and asked markets, like, what's the how many vendors are on your roster list for this season? Only a few of them said over 100.
Mm-hmm.
So even, yeah, but it's easy to add lines, Lacey. So we can show you how to do it. It's not dependent on NOAA adding a line every time you need a line. You can definitely.
It is a little more complicated than that, because there are some formulas that top out. I mean, I could just make those formulas top out at some, like, really high number, and then you can add, like, as many lines as you want. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe instead of adding, like, more lines and more spaces, I'll just, like, adjust all the formulas that bracket the list and that give a bottom row at 200, and I'll just make those, like, give a bottom row at, like, 1,000. And because those will always be blank, they'll be blank for a while. So, yeah, that should give you some more breathing room. There's another question. Once we hit 2028, are we making our own sheets from there on out? Well, that's a good question. So in terms of all of the everything but the annual analysis, you can make your own sheets. So to make your own sheet for, let's start with the calendar sales data, you duplicate this sheet. So you right click on the sheet name and then you duplicate it. And I'll take a second there. Okay, there's a copy. So then update the year, 2027. And then delete the copy of text. Then you get a 2027. Now, enter the year. Now here, these dates are wrong because there isn't a, oh no, there is, actually. What do you know? Hidden 2027 calendar right there. Oh, that's 2026. You gotta update that, 2027. Now it gives you the same dummy data, but now for 2027. Second Wednesday in May 2027 is May 12th. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, okay, good. I didn't have a calendar sales data sheet for 2027. So this is one. Again, dummy data here, vendor IDs imported from the vendor roster. And now here is the new updated list of dates that was imported from the 2027 calendar, which had been hidden. I also have a hidden 2028 calendar. So you can unhide that when you're ready for it. And then you want to copy over, you want to do the same duplication on calendar sales data sheet. Yeah, and then you will have to do the same kind of duplication on the crowd count sheet, the dashboard sheet, the weekly analysis, and the vendor analysis. And what you need to do every time you duplicate it is adjust that text that I mentioned to you, and then adjust the year up in the appropriate year cell. Make sure it's current. And then it will pull from whatever data sheet that you have data for. If it doesn't have data, then if there's no data in that sheet, then it'll just give you NAs or hopefully not error messages. I think I've stripped out, or I've put all the error messages inside it, a little wrapper and give you an NA for all the errors. So that should take you to 2028. I think, when you get past 2028, you can keep doing all of this into 2029, 2030. The only thing that will break a little bit is your annual analysis. And yeah, let me know if you want. I can go up to 2030 or 2032 with the annual analysis. I just have to update a couple of formulas, and it will, yeah, we'll get there. So yeah, let me know if that would be helpful. I can do that. Okay, great. I'll make a note.
Great, thank you, Noah, that's wonderful. Looks like we have a question for Orion. When vendors gave you data by QR code, did that populate into your sheet directly, or did you still manually have to enter the data into the spreadsheet? I'm thinking whether you use Google Forms.
Not sure
Oh,
Orion is still here.
is Orion? Okay.
Let's see.
From what I know, Orion had to when vendors gave you data by QR code. I was thinking about the paper sheet. I know that Orion had to enter the paper, but I'm not sure if the QR code went directly to their.
My guess is that the QR code typically goes to a form. That's how it typically works, because you can't really enter data that way. It's always going to a link of something, and that's probably a input sheet of some sort.
Yeah, I think they were moving wherever that data entered into, they had to move it into the spreadsheet tool that we had given them. They weren't connected.
Okay, I was the one who asked a question. Sorry to be hopping in again, but I was just curious if there was any link between Google Form, because you can use Google Form to get data directly into a spreadsheet. So I was just wondering whether those two were linked or not, but it sounds like no.
No.
No, I don't believe you can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They know it can't, you can, but it's
Oh, yeah, you
adding a
can.
major function to the tool that I think is out of scope for this project. But it can be done. Yes.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes.
We had some questions for you all. We were wondering if this tool looks interesting to you and when you might start using it. We'd also like to just hear about other challenges you have with data. We're happy to keep answering questions about the spreadsheet as well, but we're curious if you want to tell us when you might start using this. Hi, Adam.
Hi. This is definitely vendor sales data is something that our market doesn't currently collect, but it's something we've discussed. I think there's generally been some hesitation about how to roll it out with vendors, because I know vendors, anytime you're asking for that sales data, I think there's some hesitation to provide for various reasons, like, well, if you know how much we're making, you may increase vendor fees and things like that. So we're thinking about, we have an annual kind of application process for our year-long vendors, and kind of having that be part of the process of when that new cycle begins, start to communicate that as this is part of being part of this market, and just communicating why we are doing this, to just try to help explain and alleviate some of those concerns. I'm curious if any other market managers who are on here face similar issues or challenges or concerns from vendors when they started initiating this, if they already do it. But that's just one thing we're trying to balance a little bit, is that vendor hesitation that may come with this, and just a new process for vendors, something that they have to do to add to their list of things.
Yeah. Do any market managers on the call want to chime in about that? You're already collecting data.
For us, I've been training our vendors for the last, 5 years, and it does take some time. I think I'd characterize it as wearing them down with some of the concerns. After a few seasons of explaining how we use the data and the benefits, they start to get it, and so I think we're in a good place. I plan on using this starting next season, and I really excited to see like a multi-year, a 3-year and a 5-year stretch of data, and looking at that. It's really nice work, Noah. Thank you, and Amanda, thank you.
And the cohort, they're the ones that worked really hard on it.
Absolutely.
Any other market managers who collect data want to talk about their experience getting that started? I can say from the cohort that one of the ways that brought more vendors on was reporting the data back to them, making sure that they were seeing that it's living data, it's living information. The market is truly using it. Giving the market vendors themselves a monthly shot of how the market is doing, so that they can see where they fall into what else is going on, what is going on. I mean, no vendor's exact sales, aggregate sales. I think it's the reporting back and showing that the data is getting used and that there's a reason for doing this. And you can include it in decisions that the markets makes. It never hurts to say, hey, we decided to do, based on this data from our crowd counts, we decided to do this, or something like that. And also starting, being easy on yourself also, that this is a change, like Charlie said, is going to take a few years to do, and you can go for like trying to get everybody included and everybody on it, but don't like feel like it's a failure or not working because your first year you couldn't get 100% vendor reporting all the time. Also, you're in a Portland market, and a lot more and more Portland markets are doing this, and so they're starting to see that whatever market they go into, they have to be reporting data. So the more your markets are working together, the more it becomes just a culture of something that happens in Oregon or Portland. Anybody else want to add something or tell us when or if they might start using this? Thanks, Doug.
I can respond to Linnea's comment on collecting demographic data, at least to the extent of what's my experience been with demographic data. You're right, it is sensitive, and it's not something that people like giving out. So I think one thing to think about is why you want to collect that data. If you have a strong enough reason or a purpose to be collecting that demographic data, that can help you with collecting it from the vendors. For example, if it's for getting funding specifically, that is focused on, specifically BIPOC vendors, then you want to know like how many % of our market vendors are BIPOC, and that is the kind of thing that could get you more people to respond to a demographic survey. It is sensitive, and we often make it optional. We often make it something that folks can respond to or just choose to not respond. And it is also something that the categories that you choose for how folks want to respond can also vary, and it depends. It can be a very long list for folks to pick from. It can be for them to type it in. So yeah, there's a few ways to do it. Again, I think it goes back to why you want to collect that, and that's really why how people will respond to your question of like, why are you collecting my demographic data? If it's just for fun, they're not going to give it to you. If it's for an actual thing that they can see a goal for, then it's more likely that they would share that information.
Denise and Noah, maybe you could talk about how to talk about that these are all estimates sometimes, that we don't have perfect data sets, and how to just be confident, like some data is better than no data, and reporting those total sales, and how you go about imperfection with data.
Yeah, you're spot on with how I would report it. You would say, you could say, I have a total of this many vendors. I had this many respond to sales count for the chunk of the market time. And so based on that, this is how much they made. So give all those parameters when you're reporting.
Yeah, I agree. I would do that. If you like to, do back of the envelope calculations, you could make estimates for missing vendors based on like the average for that vendor type. But I don't think that's necessary. You could report what the average for a given vendor type was. The average farm was this, food was that. But I think what Denise said is probably sufficient. I saw an interesting question from Lacey about space to record qualitative observations of the market day each week. That's interesting. There is no space on this form on this tool to record observations by day. I'm not sure where it would go. I think the best bet is to keep them separate and refer back to them if you see patterns. particularly if like certain days pop out.
And Lacey, you'll want to have some system for that of like, how are you saying how warm or cold the day was, or what the weather was like, or like, is it just your observation? Or are you going to go to a weather site and pick what they said for the middle of the day? Just something to keep it a little bit consistent. Hi, Charlie. What's your question?
Yeah, so for us, part of our strategy over the last number of years is it's at 4,000 feet in Klamath Falls. It's Eastern Oregon, and it's a little hard, always been a challenge to recruit new produce vendors, new farmers. So one of our strategies is to encourage and to support artisans that might be able to start a backyard garden and actually produce quite a bit of produce, at least enough to bring to market, and also things like egg vendors, artisans who have eggs. So my question is for separating out that revenue, those sales totals for an artisan that sells eggs. Their total sales for that day is going to be a total sales. It doesn't differentiate their artisan sales and their egg sales. And I have quite a few that are both, that are primarily artisans but have some produce, some type of agricultural product.
Yeah,
I guess that's a question of just adding more granularity to this, and it's already great. So yeah, doing more, I'm sure, would be a challenge.
yeah, I think here in Oregon, we are still just working on getting vendors to tell us their total sales. I know that some markets in Seattle actually get their vendors to list things out by the different products. So that you could track, like, okay, this much of this vendor sale was the artisan products, and this much was from the eggs, and this much was from the berries that they brought for a couple weeks. You think your vendors are up for that, and you're up for tracking all of that? That's cool.
I am asking them on their card, on their tally card. So I already have data for Double Up and Snap from that vendor, but that's not their total sales for like eggs. Maybe 20-25% of the egg sales was with Snap or Double Up, but there's that remaining 25%. So on the card, I do have that data. I know how much they sold that day for their artisan crafts and then their ag product. So I do have that data. It's just it's in a different spreadsheet, which is
really
fine.
cool.
Adding it to this would just kind of maybe complicate things, and just add yeah. And thank you. Yeah.
Let's see, Doug is asking, would you be able to give an estimate of hours needed to enter data weekly or monthly from those in your group of markets for a market of 60 to 90 vendors per market? Yeah, there's some different tasks there, because there's what you do per week, and then what you do per month, and then actually collecting at market. I'm guessing like 2 to 5 hours per week, depending on the season. Denise, did people say that in the listening sessions? Or I guess that would have been a good piece of data for us to collect about using this, is how long it takes.
Don't recall them talking about the hours that it took, or maybe people talked about it being tedious, but they didn't mention like it took too much time or how much time. Yeah,
based on my time as a market manager, but I had a much simpler sheet. I think it took me like an hour and a half every week to enter data for 45 vendors and, organize all of that. And then we were doing it mostly on paper at that time. And so then there was also sort of the organizing of like getting the pieces of paper ready to go out for the next week and that kind of thing.
And I assume the start of the markets would be more time just because you have to input the vendor names and all the information about the vendor, but you don't have to do that every week. So yeah, that's that to consider.
Yeah. And what's nice about this sheet is once you have a vendor and they keep with you for several years, you don't have to enter them every year. You just have to enter the new vendors, which is nice.
Just a quick question related to my last one there, for Noah, if it would be, I imagine it would be okay to enter that artisan vendor if their food sales actually had a different name, like the artisan, their name is, Joe's Crafts, but his jams and jellies were Joe's Jams and Jellies. So that would take 2 lines in the vendor roster.
I think that's okay, Charlie, as long as you track that consistently.
Right.
I think you also, so there's costs and benefits. I think the benefit is that you get to track Joe's 2 products separately. So if one is doing well and the other is doing poorly, that'll come out of the data. The cost is that then you have to look at 2 lines to get an overall sense of how Joe is doing.
Well, thank you, everybody. We're about to wrap up here. Thank you for joining us. Really excited to hear about your adventures in the next year of data collecting, and please be in touch with us as you're trying out this tool and let us know how it's working for you. Yeah, excited to hear back. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.